The call came while the car was still moving. June Park had one hand on the steering wheel, the other resting against the window as Seoul blurred past in streaks of white and gold. Snow fell heavier than expected, thick enough to soften the city, thin enough to keep him alert. His phone buzzed in the console. He didn't need to look to know who it was. He answered anyway. "You have 6 hours," his mother said, skipping greetings. Her voice was calm in the way only people with power could afford. "If you arrive tonight without a woman at your side, I will assume you have chosen the arrangement." June exhaled through his nose. "Mother." "I have already spoken to the Kim family," she continued. "Their daughter is well-educated, obedient. She understands duty. If you don't wish to embarrass me tomorrow, you will not come alone." The line went dead. June tightened his grip on the wheel as the traffic light turned green. He drove through it without slowing, jaw clenched, pulse loud in his ears. Another arrangement. Another reminder that no matter how much money he made, no matter how many companies bowed when he entered a room, his family still saw him as a problem to be solved. His last engagement had ended 2 years ago, quietly but brutally. Since then, he had buried himself in work, built walls so high even he forgot what was on the other side. Christmas was supposed to be a break. Instead, it was a trap. By the time he reached his apartment, his decision was already made. The agency answered on the second ring. "I need someone tonight," June said, shrugging off his coat. "She needs to be polished, intelligent, comfortable around older people. This is not a date, this is a performance." There was a pause, then, "We can send someone immediately." "No locals," he added without fully understanding why. "Someone different, someone convincing." Another pause. "Understood." June checked his watch. If this went wrong, it would still buy him time. Time was all he needed. He told himself that was true right up until the doorbell rang. He expected someone tall, maybe elegant in a predictable way. Someone who would blend into the background and smile on command. What he did not expect was the woman standing in his doorway. She was dark-skinned, her complexion deep and luminous against the cream-colored coat she wore. Snowflakes clung to her curls, which were pulled back neatly but refused to be tamed. Her posture was straight, her gaze direct, unafraid. When she smiled, it wasn't rehearsed. It was calm, confident. "Mr. Park," she asked. Her Korean was flawless, smooth, but accented just enough to make him pause. "Yes," he said automatically, then caught himself. "You're early." "I was told time matters," she replied, stepping inside without waiting to be invited. "I'm Aisha." June stared at her as the door closed behind her. Up close, the effect was worse. Better, he wasn't sure. She smelled faintly of clean soap and cold air. There was nothing tentative about her, nothing apologetic. "This is a mistake," he said finally. She tilted her head. "Is it?" "You're not what I asked for." Aisha met his gaze steadily. "You asked for convincing." Something in her tone made his irritation flare. "My family is traditional." "So is mine," she said evenly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. June looked away first. "This is one night," he said. "We leave now, we return tomorrow. You will be polite, you will follow my lead." Aisha removed her gloves slowly, deliberately. "If you want them to believe we're together, that won't work." He frowned. "Excuse me." "We need a story," she continued. "We need habits, small details. People like your family don't believe words, they believe behavior." He studied her again, seeing her differently now. This wasn't nervous bravado. This was competence. "Fine," he said. "What do you suggest?" She smiled, this time softer. "We start by not standing 10 feet apart like strangers." They were halfway to the countryside when the silence finally broke. "Why did you accept this job?" June asked, eyes fixed on the road. Aisha considered him before answering. "Because I'm tired of being careful." That surprised him. Careful. With money, with people, with feelings. She folded her hands in her lap. "This pays well and it ends cleanly. That's rare." He scoffed quietly. Nothing ends cleanly. She glanced at him. Then why are you here? The question lingered between them, heavier than expected. When the gates of the family estate came into view, June felt something unfamiliar twist in his chest. Anxiety, yes, but also anticipation. He parked, turned off the engine, and finally looked at her fully. My mother will test you, he said. My grandmother will see through you if you lie poorly. Aisha nodded once. Then I won't lie poorly. The front door opened before they reached it. His mother froze. His aunt whispered. His grandmother's eyes sharpened with interest. Aisha bowed deeply, gracefully. It's an honor to finally meet you. Her voice carried warmth, respect, confidence. June felt the first crack in the wall he'd built around himself, and he didn't know whether to be terrified or relieved. That night, as they were shown to his childhood room and told, without discussion, that there was only one bed, June realized something had shifted. This was no longer just a lie. And whatever he'd invited into his life had teeth. The door closed behind them with a soft click that sounded far too loud in the small room. June stood near the desk, hands in his pockets, staring at the familiar walls he hadn't slept between in over a decade. The bed was exactly as he remembered, narrow, firm, impossible to pretend was meant for two people. Aisha remained near the door, setting her bag down carefully, her movements unhurried. They didn't even ask, she said lightly. They never do, June replied. In this house, things are decided before anyone speaks. Aisha turned to face him. Then we should decide something too. He raised an eyebrow. Like what? Boundaries, she said. If we're sharing a bed, we need rules. Otherwise, this becomes awkward very quickly. Despite himself, he let out a short laugh. You think I invited you here because I wanted this? She smiled faintly. No, I think you invited me because you were cornered. That hit closer than he liked. He gestured toward the bed. I'll take the edge. I don't move much when I sleep. I do, she said. So if I elbow you, that's not intentional. Duly noted. They changed in silence, both careful, both aware of the other without looking too closely. When the lights were turned off, the room plunged into darkness broken only by moonlight through the window. For a long moment, there was nothing but the sound of their breathing. Your family, Aisha said quietly. They love you. June stiffened. They love an idea of me. Still counts. He turned his head slightly. You don't know them. I know enough, she replied. Your grandmother watched me the entire evening, not with suspicion, with curiosity. She does that, he said. She sees people. Aisha shifted closer, just a little, the mattress dipping under her weight. Then she's probably already decided whether I'm good for you. And what do you think she decided? A pause. That I see you better than you see yourself. He swallowed, surprised by the tightness in his throat. You've known me for hours. Sometimes that's all it takes. Silence returned, but it was different now. Charged, awake. June didn't sleep much that night. Morning came too quickly. The smell of food drifted through the house, rich and comforting. Aisha was already awake when he stirred, sitting on the edge of the bed, hair pulled back, posture composed. Good morning, she said softly. He nodded, disoriented. Did you sleep? A little. He wanted to ask more. He didn't. Breakfast was an event. Everyone gathered at the long table, steam rising from bowls. Conversation flowing around them like a current June was used to letting pass without engaging. This time was different. So Aisha, his mother said, smiling tightly, tell me about your parents. Aisha set her chopsticks down politely. My father was an engineer. My mother is a retired school principal. They live in Abuja. His aunt blinked. You grew up abroad. Yes, Aisha replied. But I studied here. I wanted to understand the country properly. And you chose my son, his mother said, voice neutral. I did, Aisha said simply. June felt the table go quiet. He glanced at her, startled by how easily the words came, how sincere they sounded. His grandmother chuckled softly. Choice is a powerful thing. Later that morning, Aisha found herself alone with the older woman in the garden. Snow dusted the stone paths, the air sharp and clean. "You're very calm," the grandmother said, hands folded inside her sleeves. "I had to grow up quickly," Aisha replied. The older woman studied her. "Do you care for my grandson?" Aisha hesitated. "I care about who he is when no one is watching." The grandmother smiled. "That's a dangerous answer." "I know." In the village square, strings of lights were being hung, stalls opening for the Christmas market. June and Aisha walked side by side, closer than necessary, their shoulders brushing now and then. "You're good with them," he said quietly. "I'm good with people who are honest about what they want," she replied. "Your family wants you settled, you want peace." "And you?" he asked. She glanced at him. "I want stability and honesty, even if it's temporary." At the market, they shared roasted chestnuts, laughed over a vendor's terrible singing, let themselves be carried by the warmth of the crowd. June found himself smiling without thinking, the tightness in his chest easing. Then he saw her. Myra stood near the edge of the square, impeccably dressed, eyes sharp as they landed on him, and then on Aisha. "Well," Myra said as she approached, lips curving, "this is unexpected." June felt Aisha's hand slide into his, firm and steady. "Myra," he said coolly, "you're early." "And you're busy," she replied, eyes flicking to Aisha's face, lingering. "Who is this?" "My girlfriend," June said without hesitation. Myra laughed softly. "Really?" "Yes," Aisha said, meeting her gaze. "Really." Something dark flashed in Myra's eyes. "You move on quickly." June stepped forward, his tone hardening. "This isn't a conversation you're entitled to." The moment stretched, tense and brittle, until Myra smiled again, thin and sharp. "Enjoy your holiday." When she left, Aisha exhaled slowly. "Thank you," June said. "For what?" "For standing your ground." She looked at him. "I wasn't pretending." That night, back in the room, the air felt heavier, closer. June sat on the bed, rubbing his hands together. "This was supposed to be simple," he said. "Simple never lasts," Aisha replied. He looked up at her. "I don't want this to end tomorrow." Her breath caught just slightly. "June." "I know how this started," he continued. "But what I feel, what's happening, it's real." She crossed the room slowly. "Real things are fragile." "So am I," he admitted. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Aisha leaned in, closing the distance, her forehead resting against his. "Just tonight," she whispered. He nodded, heart pounding. When their lips met, it wasn't rushed. It was careful, honest, and it changed everything. The kiss lingered longer than either of them expected. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing unevenly, June rested his forehead against Aisha's, eyes closed. "This is a mistake," he murmured. "Yes," she agreed softly, "but it's a chosen one." That night, they didn't go further. The restraint surprised him. It made everything sharper. The way her fingers brushed his wrist when they turned off the light, the way her body fit beside his without effort, the way sleep came only in fragments. In the early hours of the morning, June lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing even out. For the first time in years, his thoughts weren't about work, deals, or expectations. They were about what would happen when morning came. Because morning always came. The next day unfolded like a slow tightening knot. June's cousin, Daniel, arrived just before lunch, coat dusted with snow, expression unreadable. He greeted everyone warmly, then caught June's eye with a look that said, "We need to talk." They found a quiet corner near the back veranda. "She's impressive," Daniel said casually. "Your girlfriend." June's jaw tightened. "Get to the point." Daniel leaned against the railing. "I did some digging." A familiar chill ran through June. "Why?" "Because I've never seen you look like this," Daniel replied. "Relaxed, present. I wanted to know what changed." And she doesn't exist," Daniel said bluntly. "At least not the way your family thinks." June felt his pulse spike. You're wrong. I wish I were, Daniel said. Her resume is clean but thin. No long-term ties here. She's not lying maliciously, but she's not telling the whole truth. June said nothing. Daniel sighed. Listen, I don't care how this started. I care about how it ends. If she leaves tomorrow, you'll pretend you're fine. You always do, but you won't be. June looked away, toward the snow-covered garden. What are you saying? I'm saying if she matters, Daniel said quietly, then don't let fear decide for you. That night, Aisha found June alone in the kitchen, standing in the dark, staring at nothing. You disappeared, she said. He turned, eyes searching her face. Daniel knows. She went still. How much? Enough. Aisha closed her eyes briefly, as if bracing herself. I never wanted to hurt you. I know, he said. That's what makes this unbearable. They sat at the small table, the distance between them charged. What happens after Christmas? He asked. Aisha's fingers tightened around her mug. I go back to my life. And what about this? He pressed. She looked up at him, eyes shining. This is real, that's the problem. June reached across the table, covering her hand with his. Stay. The word hung between them, heavy and dangerous. Stay as what? She asked. As mine, he said. Not hired, not pretending. Her breath caught. You don't understand the consequences. I understand the loneliness, he replied. I understand waking up every day knowing you chose safety over truth. Silence stretched. Then Aisha stood, crossing the room until she was in front of him. Tonight, she said quietly. No lies, no pretending. He stood too, hands framing her face. Tonight, he agreed. What followed was not hurried. It was deliberate, intimate, layered with emotion neither of them had planned to feel. When they finally lay together, the world felt suspended, as if time itself was holding its breath. But fear is patient. Before dawn, Aisha slipped out of bed, heart hammering. She dressed quietly, hands shaking, leaving the room exactly as it was. On the desk, she placed a folded note. June woke to silence. At first, he thought she was in the bathroom. Then he saw the empty space beside him, the cold. He sat up, dread flooding his chest. The note trembled in his hands as he read. Thank you for choosing me, even briefly. You reminded me that love doesn't have to be earned through pain. I'm sorry for leaving like this. I was afraid you'd ask me to stay again, and I wouldn't be strong enough to say no. His chest caved in. Downstairs, his grandmother was waiting. She's gone, June said hoarsely. I know, the older woman replied. You let her leave. She had to, his grandmother said gently, and now you have to decide whether to follow. I don't know where to start. She smiled, eyes kind but firm. You've always known how to find what matters. 2 hours later, June was on the road, snow falling hard, determination burning through the ache in his chest. In Seoul, Aisha sat in a quiet cafe near the hospital, textbooks spread out before her, eyes unfocused. She told herself she had done the right thing. That leaving was mercy. The bell over the door rang. She didn't look up until she heard his voice. Running seems to be your specialty. Her breath left her in a rush. June. You don't get to decide what hurts me, he said, standing across from her. You don't get to leave and call it kindness. Tears welled in her eyes. I started this with a lie. And ended it with truth, he shot back. That's what matters. People were staring. Neither of them cared. I love you, he said, voice steady despite the tremor underneath. Not the idea of you. You stay. Let's build something real. Aisha covered her mouth, shaking. You're asking me to risk everything. So am I, he said softly. After a long moment, she nodded. Okay. The word felt like a promise. And for the first time, June believed the future was something he could choose. 3 days later, the apartment no longer felt like a temporary shelter. It surprised both of them. June had expected tension, uncertainty, some awkward negotiation of space. Instead, Life slipped into a rhythm that felt dangerously natural. Aisha claimed the kitchen without asking, rearranging spices, humming softly while she cooked. June worked from the dining table instead of his office, glancing up more often than necessary just to confirm she was still there. At night, they talked, not about the past, that came later, but about small things, childhood memories, bad habits, things they pretended not to care about but secretly did. "You alphabetize your books," Aisha said one evening, flipping through a shelf. "It's efficient. It's obsessive." He smirked. "You color-code your notes." She paused. "That's different." It felt like learning someone slowly, deliberately, without the pressure of performance. And yet, outside the apartment, the world was already pushing back. The call came during a video meeting. June muted his microphone when he saw the name on the screen. He answered anyway. "You've created a problem," Chairman Park said without preamble. June leaned back in his chair. "I didn't realize my personal life required your approval." "It does when it affects investor confidence," the man replied coolly. "The Singapore deal is sensitive. Optics matter." June's jaw tightened. "Be clear." "End it," Park said, "or we move forward without you." The line went dead. June stared at the blank screen, pulse steady, expression unreadable. He had expected resistance. He hadn't expected how little it would matter. That evening, he told Aisha everything. She listened without interrupting, her expression carefully neutral. When he finished, she nodded once. "So this is where you choose," she said quietly. "I already did," he replied. She studied him, searching for hesitation. "This deal, it's big. It's replaceable." Her throat tightened. "People don't usually choose people over power." "I'm tired of choosing power," he said. "It never chooses back." She stepped closer, resting her forehead against his chest. For a moment, neither spoke. The next morning, Aisha returned to her apartment to pick up more clothes. She didn't notice the damage at first. The hallway was quiet, too quiet. Then she saw the door. The paint was scratched deep, letters carved into the surface. "Go home, not welcome, leave." Her breath hitched. She backed away slowly, heart pounding. June arrived 20 minutes later. He took one look at her face, and then at the door, and something in him went utterly still. "Who did this?" he asked. "I don't know," she whispered, "but I think I do." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't curse. He simply nodded once. "Pack what you need," he said. "You're not staying here again." "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Protect what's mine." The next 48 hours unfolded quietly and devastatingly. Lawyers moved. Contracts dissolved. Financial pressure was applied with surgical precision. By the end of the second day, Chairman Park's board had removed him, citing ethical violations that had been buried for years. June watched the news without satisfaction, only relief. That night, he came home with a small velvet box in his hand. Aisha knew what it was before he opened it. "June, I'm not doing this because of fear," he said, kneeling in front of her, "or because of what happened. I'm doing this because every version of my future that makes sense has you in it." He opened the box. Inside was a simple platinum ring, elegant and unmistakably chosen with care. "Marry me," he said, "not because it's dramatic, because it's true." Tears streamed down her face as she laughed softly. "You don't do things halfway, do you?" "No," he said, "never have." She nodded, reaching for him. "Yes." They married 6 weeks later. Snow fell again, light and steady, as if the season had waited for them. The ceremony was small but intentional. Her family flew in, vibrant and warm, filling the space with laughter and color. His family watched with quiet awe as traditions blended, Korean vows spoken beside Nigerian blessings, hands clasped, voices rising together. June's mother cried openly. His grandmother smiled like she had known all along. Later, alone in their penthouse, Aisha pressed her palm against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Do you ever think about how this started?" she asked. "All the time," he said. "It scares me." It comforts me, she replied. It means love doesn't need permission. Weeks passed. Then one morning, Aisha sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. June noticed immediately. What's wrong? She looked up at him, eyes bright with unshed tears. I took a test. He didn't breathe, and... She smiled shakily. We're going to have a baby. The world narrowed to that single sentence. He pulled her into his arms, laughing and crying at the same time, forehead pressed to hers. We'll tell everyone after the first trimester, he said softly. I want to protect this. She nodded. Me too. 6 months later, the nursery smelled of fresh paint and clean linen. Aisha rested one hand on her belly, the other holding June, as they argued gently over names. What about something meaningful? She suggested. Everything about this is meaningful, he replied. She smiled. Then how about hope? He considered it, then nodded. Hope Park. The contractions started 3 weeks early. Labor was long, brutal, exhausting. June never left her side, whispering encouragement, steady and unwavering. When their daughter finally arrived, crying strong and loud, he broke completely. She's perfect, he whispered, tears streaming down his face as he held her. She's everything. Later, in the quiet of the hospital room, Aisha watched him rock their child gently, his expression soft in a way she had never imagined possible. All of this, he said quietly, from a lie. No, she corrected, from a choice. He smiled, kissing her forehead. Then I'd choose it again. The days after the birth passed in a haze of exhaustion and wonder. June had always believed he understood responsibility. He had managed billions, negotiated under pressure, carried the weight of expectations since childhood. None of it compared to the moment his daughter wrapped her tiny fingers around his thumb and refused to let go. He barely slept, and he didn't care. At home, life rearranged itself around the smallest person in the room. Meetings were shortened. Phone calls went unanswered. Aisha watched him with quiet amazement as he learned the rhythm of diapers and feedings, packing the nursery at night, whispering nonsense words just to keep their daughter calm. You're good at this, Aisha said one evening as she leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, hair loose around her shoulders. June glanced down at the baby resting against his chest. She's very persuasive. Their daughter blinked up at him, dark eyes already observant, as if studying the world she'd entered. Do you think she knows how much she's changed everything? Aisha asked softly. He smiled. I hope she never doubts it. Not everyone was happy. The article appeared on an international business blog late one night. It didn't name names directly, but the implications were clear. Reckless executive, emotional decision-making, cultural controversy. The comments were worse. Aisha found June staring at his phone, long after midnight. You knew this would happen, she said gently. Yes, he admitted. I just didn't expect it to still hurt. She sat beside him, taking the phone from his hand and setting it face down. You don't owe the world access to your family. He nodded, exhaling slowly. I spent my life trying to be untouchable. Turns out the moment I let myself care, the world noticed. And, she asked. And I'd do it again. Weeks later, his mother visited alone. She stood in the living room, staring at the framed wedding photo on the wall, then at the baby sleeping peacefully in the bassinet. She looks like you, she said finally. June raised an eyebrow. That's the first time you've ever said that about anyone. His mother ignored the comment. She turned to Aisha, her expression careful but sincere. You are stronger than I realized. Aisha met her gaze calmly. So are you. Silence stretched, then June's mother bowed her head slightly. I was wrong, she said, about many things. It wasn't an apology in the way most people expected, but for her, it was everything. Christmas came again, quieter this time. Snow fell gently outside their home, lights glowing warmly against the early dusk. Aisha rocked their daughter near the tree while June watched, a mug cooling in his hands. Do you regret it? Aisha asked suddenly. He frowned. Regret what? Hearing me, she said, smiling faintly. He laughed softly. I regret not doing it sooner. She shook her head. If you hadn't been desperate, you never would have. True, he said, but desperation has its uses. Their daughter stirred, letting out a small, impatient sound. June crossed the room, taking her carefully. You know, he murmured to the baby, you were the best negotiation I ever made. Aisha rolled her eyes. Don't start turning her into a business metaphor. Too late, he said, grinning. That night, after the house grew quiet, they sat together on the couch, fingers intertwined. I used to think love was something you earned by being perfect, June said thoughtfully, by meeting expectations. And now, Aisha asked. And now I think love is what happens when you stop running, he replied. When you let someone see you, even when it's uncomfortable. She rested her head on his shoulder. You didn't just stop running, you turned around. Outside, snow continued to fall, soft and steady. Their daughter slept between them, breathing slow and even, unaware of how much she represented. Not just love, but defiance. Not just family, but choice. From a lie told in desperation had come a life built on truth. And for the first time, June felt certain of something simple and unshakable. This imperfect, hard-won happiness was enough. The following Christmas arrived quietly, without ultimatums or contracts or fear hanging in the air. June noticed it in the small things first. The way he woke before his alarm, not from anxiety, but from the soft sound of their daughter stirring in the next room. The way Aisha hummed while she decorated the tree, moving slowly now, deliberately, savoring the moment instead of rushing through it. Outside, snow dusted the street in a thin, perfect layer. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and tea. June stood in the doorway of the nursery, watching Aisha lift their daughter from the crib. She had grown so fast it startled him sometimes. Stronger neck, curious eyes, a tiny frown when she didn't immediately get what she wanted. She gets that from you, Aisha teased. I negotiate better, he replied. She just demands. Their daughter let out a soft, indignant sound, as if offended by the accusation. Later that afternoon, they drove to the countryside. Not because they were expected to, because they wanted to. The family estate looked the same as it always had, but it felt different now, less imposing, less heavy. June realized as they stepped inside that the place itself hadn't changed at all. He had. His mother greeted them at the door, her smile genuine, her hands immediately reaching for the baby. My granddaughter, she murmured, awe softening her voice. June watched the interaction carefully, but there was no tension. No sharp words waiting to be spoken, just quiet acceptance. His grandmother sat by the window, wrapped in a shawl, eyes bright when she saw them. You came back, she said. We did, June replied. She looked at Aisha, then at the child in her arms. I told you love follows those who see clearly. Aisha smiled. You were right. Dinner passed easily. Laughter replaced scrutiny. Stories replaced expectations. At one point, June caught himself watching the scene from a distance, Aisha talking animatedly with his aunt, his mother rocking the baby gently, and felt something settle inside his chest. Peace. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, June stepped outside alone. Snow crunched beneath his shoes as he walked the familiar path along the garden. The air was cold, sharp, grounding. He thought about the man he'd been a year ago, driving through the same snow, heart clenched, convinced he needed control to survive, convinced love was a liability. He smiled faintly at the memory. Behind him, the door opened. You disappeared, Aisha said softly, joining him. I was thinking, he replied. She slipped her hand into his coat pocket, fingers threading through his. Dangerous habit. Necessary one, he said. Do you ever think about how close we came to never choosing this? All the time, she admitted. But I also think about how easy it would have been to walk away and call it fate. And instead, he asked. Instead we stayed, she said, even when it was uncomfortable. June nodded, especially then. They stood together in silence, watching snowflakes drift down under the porch light. "I used to believe strength meant never needing anyone," he said quietly. "Now I know it means letting yourself be changed." Aisha rested her head against his shoulder. "You were never weak," she said. "You were just alone." Inside, their daughter cried softly, a brief, impatient sound. June laughed under his breath. "Duty calls." Later, tucked into bed, their daughter sleeping between them, June stared up at the ceiling, feeling the steady rhythm of the life he'd built. A lie had started it all, a desperate choice made under pressure. But what followed hadn't been accidental. It had been a series of decisions, to stay, to listen, to protect, to love openly even when the world pushed back. He turned his head, watching Aisha sleep, her face calm in the dim light. He leaned over and kissed her forehead gently. "Merry Christmas," he whispered. She stirred, smiling without opening her eyes. "Merry Christmas." Outside, snow continued to fall, quiet and forgiving, covering old tracks and making room for new ones. And somewhere in that stillness was a simple truth June carried with him now. Sometimes the best chapters in life don't begin with honesty. They begin with fear. And then, with courage, they become something real. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe for more unforgettable stories. Like this video to support the channel, and comment below. Do you believe love can grow from the most unexpected beginnings? Until next time, may your days be warm, your choices brave, and your heart open to miracles you never saw coming. Years later, June would still remember that first Christmas, not for the fear that started it, but for the moment everything cracked open. It wasn't the argument with his mother or the desperate phone call to the agency. It wasn't even the shock of opening his door and seeing Aisha standing there, unapologetic, unafraid, entirely herself. It was the instant he realized he had been living half a life. On this Christmas morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains of their bedroom, pale and soft. The house was quiet except for the gentle breathing of their daughter asleep between them, one tiny hand resting on Aisha's arm as if claiming her place in the world. June lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling something he'd once believed impossible. Contentment. He turned his head slowly, watching Aisha sleep. Time had softened her and strengthened her at the same time. Motherhood hadn't erased who she was, it had sharpened it. She moved through the world with the same calm confidence, but now there was a warmth in her eyes that came from knowing she was no longer alone in carrying her dreams. He reached out and brushed his thumb lightly over her knuckles. She stirred. "You're thinking again," she murmured. "I always think on Christmas," he said quietly. She opened her eyes, smiling faintly. "Dangerous day for it." He chuckled. "Do you ever think about the woman you almost didn't come?" Aisha glanced down at their daughter, then back at him. "All the time, especially when I'm tired, especially when things are hard." "And," he asked. "And I'm grateful she was brave," Aisha said, "even when she was scared." Their daughter shifted, letting out a small sound of protest. June smiled and pulled her gently into his arms. "You know," he said softly, "I built my life around control. I thought if I planned enough, worked hard enough, I could avoid disappointment." Aisha propped herself up on one elbow. And now I know the best things happen when you don't see them coming," he replied. "When you choose people instead of outcomes." Outside, church bells rang faintly in the distance. Snow fell again, slow and steady, the kind that seemed to hush the world rather than cover it. Later that day, family filled the house. Laughter echoed through the rooms. Food crowded the table. Stories overlapped, voices warm and familiar. June watched Aisha move easily among them, his family, her family, no longer separate, no longer defined by difference. His mother caught his eye from across the room and nodded once, a silent acknowledgement of a truth she'd resisted for too long. This was family. That evening, after the house quieted again and their daughter was tucked into bed, June and Aisha sat together near the window, mugs warm in their hands. "Do you ever regret how fast everything happened?" Aisha asked. June thought about it, about the risk, the backlash, the nights of fear, the moments of doubt. No, he said, because we didn't rush love, we rushed honesty. She smiled. That might be my favorite thing you've ever said. He leaned back, exhaling slowly. Funny thing is, if someone had told me years ago that my life would change because I hired a stranger to lie for me, I would have laughed. And now, she asked. And now I know the universe has a strange sense of humor, he said. It gives you what you need, not what you ask for. They sat in silence, watching snow gather on the ledge outside. June thought of the people watching this story somewhere far away. People spending Christmas alone. People are afraid to choose love because it felt too risky. People who believed their best chances had already passed. He wished he could tell them what he knew now. That love doesn't arrive when you're ready. That it doesn't ask permission. That sometimes it enters your life disguised as a mistake. And that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to stay anyway. Aisha rested her head on his shoulder. "Merry Christmas," she said softly. "Merry Christmas," he replied. In the quiet that followed, surrounded by warmth, family, and the life they had chosen again and again, June understood something simple and profound. The lie that began their story had never been the truth that defined it. The truth was every choice they made afterward. And that, more than anything, was what made it real. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Like the video to support the channel, and comment below. Do you believe love can come from the most unexpected beginnings? From our family to yours, may this season bring you courage, warmth, and the kind of love that changes everything.